Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you my painting process with watercolors. I'm going to highlight the most important steps and decisions I make for this Drawtober illustration, and in particular for the prompt midnight delivery. For those who don't know, Drawtober is an art challenge that takes place in October, but as opposed to Inktober, it gives you only 6 prompts to follow, so you don't feel that pressure of drawing every single day. This will be a simple drawing to paint, but I follow the same steps I would do for a more elaborate one. But before starting with the tips, make sure you subscribe to my channel and click the bell button so I can do more videos like this. So the first thing I do is testing my colors and color combinations on a piece of paper. You never know how the watercolors will look on paper since you try them on paper. By trying them, you can adjust the water, pigments, and in the end you may decide to go for a completely different color. The best way to do this is to use the same type of paper as for your final painting, but you may not have it or you may not want to waste your pricey cotton paper. It's totally fine to use another type of paper or the back of an old painting before throwing it away. Just don't use the thin printer paper and don't skip this step. I know this tip may sound a bit too obvious, and now you may be thinking, hey girl, watercolors work with water, so what's so new about that? Well, I want to emphasize this because I still see many artists using watercolors directly from the pen or with very little water. And it's fine if you're searching for a particular effect or for more coverage, but most of the times it looks like a mistake. And this is because it's very difficult to manage a thick paint. It's easier instead to get a lot of blotches and irregular spots. And this is also why a lot of people give up on watercolors after just a few tries. There are so many advantages from diluting the colors. First, it's easier to fix colors later. Let's say I want to change the color of the background, I can add 1 or 2 layers later and cover everything very well. Second, it's easier to cover up mistakes because the color is not so visible, and it's also easier to remove the color by rubbing with a clean wet brush. At this stage, the colors will look very faded and transparent, but I'll tell you later how to obtain more coverage and more intensity in your illustration. So don't be afraid of using a lot of water, you never go wrong with very diluted colors. When I have to paint a large area like this background with a lot of things inside, I find it easier to divide it into sections. I spot the elements in my drawing that I can use to delimit each section. So in this case, I paint all the space from one cloud to another. I also decided to leave the top of the clouds blank, so I don't worry about the point where the two sections meet. After painting the first section of the background, I dry it with a hairdryer and I move on to the second one and so on. This strategy relieves you of pressure and frustration as you can work slower and you can also avoid the typical streaked appearance. Be sure to prepare a good amount of paint in advance and to use a brush large enough for your section. So if you can use this technique in your painting, do it because it will make your life easier. So for the first layer of my painting, I don't think too much about shadows and volumes, I just want to lay down the colors and see how they look together. If you want to do too many things at this stage, you may get something wrong. You don't have the time to think about where to place the shadows, or which shade you should use, and how intense it should be. There are too many decisions to make, and it's better to make them one at a time. So at this stage, just paint all the colors you choose for your characters and objects of your drawing. A nice way to catch the attention is to use the same vibrant color in different parts of the drawing. So for example, in this illustration, I used this warm red both for the ribbon on the box and for the ribbon on the head. And I chose these specific points because the opening box is the main theme of this illustration and also the main trouble for this little witch. At the same time, the head is located in the face area, where you can see that the eyes are looking in another direction, and this is the main cause of this failed delivery. Also, if you want these parts to be more evident, you should use the colors as they are in the pens without mixing them with other shades. After just one layer of color, the water where I clean my brush has become very muddy, so I have to change it, otherwise it would affect my color mixing. You don't have to change it after each layer of color, but I suggest you to do it at least once in the middle of your painting process. After the first layer of color, the painting looks flat and lifeless, but you have to trust the process. I usually use the second layer to intensify the colors and create volumes. And to do that, I use the same colors I created for the first layer, but this time less diluted so they look more intense. At this point, I create gradients in each part of the illustration. I just apply the color and then I smudge it with a clean and damp brush. If you keep diluting your colors with enough water, it will be very easy to blend them and to avoid blotches and blemishes. In some parts of the illustration, like the boots, I don't blend the colors because I want to create hard-edged shapes. And in my opinion, it's more interesting when you switch between soft and hard edges. But it's up to you. When it comes to shadows, first you need to decide where the light is coming from and then what colors you should use. In the previous step, I intensified the colors in the same direction of the shadows, so now I have to decide whether to add another layer with the same colors or to add darker colors. I go for the darker colors since I like more depth and a 3D look. And now I tell you a secret. I use complementary colors to darken my base colors. Complementary colors are the colors on the opposite side of the color wheel. So for example, the complement of red is green, but nobody tells you which shade of red and which shade of green. So you either study very well the color theory or you do a lot of experiments with your colors. In the case of the hair, I added a bit of indigo to the burnt sienna I used before. Burnt sienna is in the orangey side of the color wheel and the complement is blue. I tried mixing it with different blues and the best results came with the indigo. You can try this too. So in the end, I suggest you to avoid pure black as it will make your colors look dull and dirty. Use instead other darker colors like a dark red, brown or a dark blue to darken your colors, or try using the complementaries and see how it goes. Adding details can be really tricky because it's funny and relaxing to do, but at the same time they can ruin your illustration. Over-rendering can stiffen your painting and make it look chaotic. Whenever I get to this step, I ask myself, are these details necessary to depict this object? Are they functional to the story? If the answer is not really, then I try to minimize them or to avoid them at all. So in the case of the broom, I think it was necessary adding some lines to make it more credible, but I tried not adding too many. As for the witch's clothes, I thought it wasn't needed too many details. I also felt I should write happy birthday on the cake, since it tells a bit more about the story. Watercolors don't have that much texture unless you use a lot of granulating colors. Also, the paper cannot handle too many layers even if it's a cotton one. At some point you'll notice that you remove the color instead of intensifying it. This means that the paper is done with the water. I say that after 4 or 5 layers you should stop insisting on the same parts of the painting and use another medium to get the result you want. I usually use color pencils to enhance the line art, to add some texture here and there, and intensify some colors or shadows. You can also use other mediums like gouache to do the same things. So these are 10 important steps that I identified throughout my painting process. I hope this video answers your deepest concerns or at least give you some useful tips. Thank you for watching and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos. See you next week. Bye!